The letter that arrived 40 years late. In a small town tucked between pine-covered hills and faded train tracks, there lived an old man named Walter Hayes. He was the kind of man the world almost forgot, quiet, steady and alone. Every morning at exactly 6 a.m., he'd sit on the front porch of his weathered blue house, black coffee in hand, and watch the mail truck roll down the gravel road. Not because he expected anything, but because habit was the only thing he had left. Walter had outlived nearly everyone. His wife, Margaret, had passed 15 winters ago. Their only son, Thomas, was buried under a white cross in a cemetery overseas, killed in Vietnam in 1971. And since then, silence had filled the spaces where conversation used to live. That's why, when the mailman slowed to a stop on a Tuesday morning in April, Walter didn't even look up. He assumed it was a mistake. A bill, a flyer, something from a world that no longer asked for him. But when he opened the mailbox, there was only one envelope, yellowed at the edges, stamped with a postmark from 1971, and addressed in handwriting he hadn't seen in 4 decades. To Mr. Walter Hayes, from Thomas A. Hayes, U.S. Army, Vietnam. His knees buckled. He didn't cry. Not yet. He simply stood there, frozen, holding a piece of time that should have arrived a lifetime ago. Inside that envelope was a letter, a message from a son who died at 22. A message that had traveled through war zones, storms, sorting centers, and years of silence, just to find its way home. Walter didn't take the letter inside. He sat back down on the porch, held it in his hands like a wounded bird, and whispered, "Tommy." Then ever so gently he began to read. Part 2, the words he never got to say. Walter's hands trembled as he unfolded the fragile paper, its corners soft, ink faded like breath on a mirror. The handwriting was unmistakable. It was young, hurried, and full of hope. He hadn't seen it in over 40 years. But every curve of every letter felt like his boy reaching through time. "Hey, Dad, if you're reading this, then somehow this letter made it out. I'm writing from a base camp outside Quang Tri. Things are tense here, but I'm okay. You don't need to worry." Walter smiled faintly. He had worried. Every day. Every hour. Even after the telegram came. Even after the funeral. Even when the world told him to move on, he never did. I know I don't say this enough, but thank you for making me the kind of man who could come here and do what I believe is right. I carry your lessons every time I lace my boots. Walter closed his eyes, the breeze moving through the porch like a memory. It had been so long since he'd heard his son's voice, even on paper. He could almost hear him now, Thomas laughing in the garage, tossing a football in the yard, sneaking peanut butter from the jar when his mother wasn't looking. The letter continued. "There's a guy in my unit, Rodriguez. He got a letter from home yesterday and just sat there crying. Said he missed his dad more than anything. That hit me harder than I expected. So I wanted to say this before anything happens." Walter gripped the paper tighter. He could feel it coming. The thing a father never stops needing. The thing a son never should have to rush to say. "I love you, Dad, I really do." I don't think I said that enough before I left. But I meant it. And if I don't make it back, Walter's heart caught in his chest. Know that I left this world thinking of you. That was it. No long goodbye. No dramatic ending. Just a son alone in the jungle, with dirt on his hands, and fear in his eyes, taking time to write. His father a letter he thought might never arrive. And for 40 years it hadn't. Walter folded the letter slowly, pressed it to his chest. He didn't sob. He didn't curse the heavens. He simply sat there in the quiet, letting the weight of those words fill every hollow place that had been waiting for them. And for the first time in decades, he felt a kind of peace. Not because the pain had gone, but because the silence finally had a voice. Part 3, the one thing he carried. That night, long after the sun had slipped behind the hills and the shadows stretched like ghosts across the porch, Walter placed the letter inside a wooden cigar box, the one Margaret had given him on their 30th anniversary. Inside it were only 2 things, their wedding ring and a dog tag. It wasn't just any tag. It was Thomas's. For years, Walter had worn it beneath his shirt like a private scar. He never told anyone, not even Margaret. He'd found it among the returned belongings, wrapped in a blood-stained cloth, along with his son's Bible and combat boots. He hadn't had the strength to open that box until now. But that night, with the letter safely tucked inside, he opened it. Piece by piece, he pulled out the memories, the boots, the faded photo of Thomas at age 10, holding a fishing rod bigger than himself, the baseball glove still dusted with sand, and the dog tag, cold, heavy, etched with a name that had lived only in past tense for too long. Walter turned it over in his palm, the metal pressing into his skin like an old friend's handshake. "I carried your lessons," the letter had said. "I left this world thinking of you." Walter stood up, stepped into the night air, and for the first time in 4 decades, he walked toward his son's gravestone at the far end of the property. It wasn't grand, just a simple white marker under the oak tree, where the birds gathered in the mornings. Margaret had planted wildflowers there, forget-me-nots, but they had stopped blooming years ago. Walter knelt, placed the letter beneath the stone. Then, after a long moment, he removed the dog tag from his neck and laid it gently on top. "You don't have to carry this anymore," he whispered. "I'll carry the rest." He sat there until dawn. Part 4, The Legacy of a Letter. They buried Walter Hayes 3 days later, beside his son under the wide branches of the old oak tree. The entire town came, not because they knew him well, but because they knew what he carried. Word had spread about the letter. The mailman had told the clerk had told the pastor. By the time the funeral bell rang, everyone had heard of the father who waited 40 years for goodbye. There was no eulogy, no choir, just silence. And then a young boy stepped forward, Walter's neighbor's grandson, maybe 8 years old, holding a folded American flag. He placed it at the foot of the grave and saluted. The crowd didn't speak. They just watched. Some cried, some held hands, and one elderly woman whispered, "He finally made it home." Later that afternoon, the pastor unlocked the church doors and left a single item on display, a glass case, just beneath the stained glass window, where the light poured in soft and golden. Inside it, one dog tag, one folded letter aged and creased, and a brass plaque that read, "For Walter and Thomas Hayes, a father and son reunited by words that waited." Some letters are delivered late, but they still arrive when we need them most. People came from miles away to read that letter. Veterans, students, families. Some left flowers. Others left letters of their own. And slowly the case filled, not just with things, but with stories. Letters from sons to fathers, from mothers to daughters, from soldiers who made it home, and from those who never did. Because what Walter left behind wasn't just a story. It was a reminder that words have power, that silence can be broken, that even after death, love still finds a way. Subscribe for more good old days.